Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Cold, rainy Sunday night. In fact, it's been raining almost the entire day. But here's something to actually chill your blood a lot more. It's Damien Omen 2, the sequel to The Omen. I've always wondered why they call it Damien Omen 2 and not The Omen 2 or Damien The Omen 2. Kind of odd, but what are you gonna do? Hey, this is the movie among the three in the trilogy that I've actually watched the least. I think this is only my third time that I'm watching it watching it completely, to be honest. In fact, I've only watched it three times, I guess. So it's came out in 1978, 2 years after the events of the 2 years after the first movie, and it stars William Holden and Lee Grant along with Jonathan Scott Taylor, who plays Damien as a 12-year-old boy, something like that, 12, 13-year-old boy, and this was actually his first movie, so a great debut playing the Antichrist. You also got Robert Foxworth, Lew Ayres. I don't really know how to pronounce his name. Lew Lew Ayres. He is. I always know him as the short role that he played in Battlestar Galactica. He was the president of the 12 colonies in the original Battlestar Galactica. And since BSG is one of my favorite franchises, nostalgically the first actual series that I got into, he'll always be known for me as the president. You also have Sylvia Sidney, who plays Anne Marion, Nicholas Pryor, who plays Dr. Charles Warren, Lance Hendrickson, a young Lance Hendrickson as Sergeant Daniel Neff, and you have Elizabeth Shepard, who plays Joan Hart. I really love her in this role. I've never actually seen her in anything else, but I know she's played quite a few roles back then. And to be honest, she was lovely back in the 70s and 60s. Much older actress now. Anyway, so this is initially, like I said, it's short. It came out 2 years after the first movie. The first things that you see in this movie is set 1 week after the ending of the first movie, in which archaeologist Carl Bubenhagen, he's the one who sent the daggers of Megiddo to Damien's father to have him killed, to Ambassador Thorn to have Damien killed. He is now trying to convince Michael Morgan, because he got to know about the ambassador's death. Michael Morgan happens to know Damien's current guardian. He's being raised by his uncle, Robert Thorn, who is, I'm not sure if he's the older brother or the younger brother of his dad, but yeah, he's basically being raised by him, and his second wife, played by Lee Grant. So Michael Morgan is not convinced, but he wants Bubenhagen is having him trying to deliver a box of the daggers to Damien's new guardian, Robert Thorn, saying that Damien is the Antichrist, and he wants to convince him. So he takes him to the ruins of where they find the mural on Yigel's wall, and now Michael is convinced that this is actually Damien, and immediately after that, when they're deciding to go and warn Robert Thorn the Satan's work at play, the ruins collapses and both he and Bubenhagen are buried alive. That scene is always going to be. I am pretty claustrophobic, and I have this, since I have a bronchitic asthma. I've always got this fear of being suffocated to death. So being trapped under those ruins with sand flowing in at a quick pace is something that actually scares me more than ghosts and goblins and all those things. So after that, it's 7 years later, and I believe the boy is around 13 years old. He's being raised along with his cousin Mark, and they're very close. They do everything together, much to the disdain of their grandmother, played by Sylvia Sidney. Mark is played by Lucas Donat. I don't think I've seen him in anything else, but I'll have to check his biography. I'll check his Wikipedia page. I don't think I've actually seen Lucas in anything else. He is good. Oh no, he's a former actor. He is now the Chief Marketing Officer of Autonomy. So yeah, there goes that theory. Anyway, the Aunt Marion, not the grandmother, I believe he might be both Robert Thorn and his brothers. He might be Robert Thorn's aunt. So she doesn't like him, and that kind of puts off his wife Anne Thorne, who's his second wife, and Mark is basically Richard Thorne's son from the first marriage. So Anne dotes on both the boys. She treats them like she's both of them are her own sons, and she doesn't like the fact that Anne Marion is cold towards Damien. And unfortunately for Anne Marion, a spooky crow comes in at night and scares her. She gets a heart attack and she dies. As the boys have left to the military academy, and over there, Damien starts to realize that he is something special. He has got these powers, and helping him in the academy is one of Satan's followers or Satan's worshippers, played the Sergeant Neff, who's played by Lance Henriksen. Perfectly chosen role, I would say. Lance Henriksen does pull it off really well, and there's a lot of things that happens where Damien is in the forefront of. There's numerous bizarre incidents in the Thorne family. The photojournalist who tries to interview Richard is run over by a truck. A senior manager who is against certain things. The family is drowns in the frozen lake, and two other employees are suffocated by toxic fumes because they are not going as per the plan that Satan has for young Damien. And also helping them along is another of Satan's worshippers, Paul Bucher, who's a higher up employee in the company Thorne Industries, played by Robert Foxworth. Love this actor, by the way. I've seen him in quite a few things. Never a major star, but always a good character actor, whether he's playing a good guy or a bad guy. So all of these things lead to finally Neff telling Damien that, read this particular passage in the Bible and you will understand your destiny. And that basically talks about the Antichrist and the number 666, and then Damien goes to the washroom and then checks that he sees a scalp. Initially he is devastated. He doesn't know why he's chosen, but he is pretty soon to actually come to terms with it, and things happen. Finally, 7 years later, the excavation of the ruins are delivered to Thorne Museum, and Dr. Warren, who's the museum's curator and Richard's friend, opens and finds the sacred daggers along with a letter by Buchenhagen, and he is also convinced that Damien is the Antichrist. Mark overhears this conversation and is scared, and he's kind of being aloof from Damien. Damien confronts him, and he admits that he is the devil's son. He wants Mark to be along with him. Mark rejects him, and Damien is upset, and he causes an aneurysm in his cousin's brain. Cousin dies. The Thornes are devastated. So even though Damien actually loves his brother, loves his cousin, who is basically being raised as brothers, but now Richard goes to New York to see Warren, and he tells him about the Eagle's Wall, which is stored in one of the containers. While there, Warren is killed by a freak locomotive accident, and Richard is now convinced. He goes to, he knows that Damien is the Antichrist. He is devastated that his son is also killed, and he goes, tries to warn his wife that they need to do it, and turns out Anne is also a Satan worshipper. She kind of knows that Damien is the Antichrist, and she's been there all along to help protect him. And I believe in one of the discussions she is supposed to have been representative of the Whore of Babylon, and she takes two of the daggers and kills her husband. She screams Damien's name, but Damien decides to blow up the museum, killing her, killing everybody else, and he leaves. He just sees Sergeant Neff coming out, and Damien comes up completely changed, transformed. He is now in control of his self and his destiny, and he doesn't have a problem that he's killed everybody in his family, but of course nobody else knows that. There's also the scene where the doctor, who finds out there's something wrong with Damien's blood, with this jackal DNA or something like that, and he is killed in a freak accident as well. That's one of the things that I remember seeing it the first time. And here's the odd part: even though I've watched the first two movies many times before, because we were dependent on cable. I remember watching this movie once, maybe in the late 90s, and I'd already seen the first and the second movie many times before that. So I was been around 23 years old. I remember watching this at my grandma's house one night, was it, or one afternoon, and I remember that scene in which he gets killed in the elevator. But that's the only thing I actually remembered about it. So yeah, really good follow-up. The movie is pretty awesome. I still think the first one is way better, but this is a really good follow-up to it, even though it is not as good. Still, pretty strong contender. It was made on a budget of 6.8 million and made 26.5 million at the box office. Current times, I don't really know DVD and Blu-rays and all of that. Who knows what the movie has made? Not really sure about what the overall consensus is, but yes, it is a pretty good film. I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It's a pretty good movie. It's always been one of my, it's always been, not always, but the 3 times that I've watched it, I still think it's a pretty good follow-up, and I'm never bored by watching this movie. So yeah, that's basically it for Damien Omen 2, and I shall see you in another movie review coming out pretty soon. Good night.